Welcome back to It Tastes Like Burning. This is Matt.
This is Jesse.
We have a guest today. Took out an ad out on Craigslist looking for, and somehow or another one of our members applied and responded to it. So he managed to bring some friends, but they're too scared to be on today. So we're going to go ahead and just use Diego. And Diego, tell us a little bit about your young self.
Okay. So, my name's Diego. I've been on this department, or my local department, for approximately, what would you say, Matt? 6 years now? Has it been 6 years?
It's all like 2 years to me.
Wait a minute. What day is today? Not my day to keep up with it.
Oh.
Keep going.
No, my name's Diego. I've been on the department for going on about 6 years now. Started out as a junior when the department first started offering that to the community to take young and helpless kids and turn them into great men. We're still working on that part, though. But throughout being on the department, I learned that I kind of like this stuff. Took kind of a long way around. And eventually ended up in paramedic school. And since then, I've been a paramedic for just over 2 years now.
Now, just to kind of fill everyone in, the local paramedicine agency that Diego works for, they're to say they're busy is kind of an understatement. They, I don't know, they probably run 8,000 calls a year with a staff of like 3 people. Something like that.
Somewhere in that neighborhood, I'm pretty sure.
So, yeah, they're exceedingly busy. You do get a pretty healthy mix of urban and rural type response. So, where you'll get the exact same accident in town or in the county gets compounded by response times. The other benefit that we have is that we're very close to multiple level 1 trauma centers and major burn centers. So that's also going to kind of, I don't want to say change the dynamics of the calls, but you can take a pretty bad call, and if you can package them out quick enough and ship them off, you'll be getting them to some pretty serious agencies pretty quick. Is that pretty accurate there, Diego?
Yeah, definitely. Depending on where you're at in the county, there's instances where you can be to a level 1 trauma center within 20 to 30 minutes, depending on how brave your driver is.
Now, in your entire response district, do you have any career departments, fire departments that you respond with?
No career departments, all volunteer departments.
All volunteer. So now, it's not all sunshine and rainbows with volunteers. What's some of the challenges that you have to deal with responding with being a medical agency and your volunteers are showing up? What's some of the challenges and difficulties there?
At our agency, we always say we love our volunteers. They show up when we need them. Most of the time, they show up when we need them. But there is that one little instance at 3 a.m. where there's just nobody to be had. And that's the difficulty of working with some volunteer agencies. On the other hand, we, with them being volunteers, the process for becoming a volunteer fireman, especially in some of the more rural areas, is you show up and you say, "Hey, I'd like to be a volunteer fireman." There you go. Here's the keys. Go to this medical. And with dealing with people with little to no experience that may have been on the department for seriously 2 days is sometimes harder to do than if you were just by yourself.
Sure, because they're going to get in your way.
Right. Right.
So what is your ideal preferential person to show up? Just being a good hand, or would you prefer to have extra skills on scene?
So working out here, you get kind of used to working by yourself. If you get out further into the county, you've got, it's yourself, maybe a supervisor. There are trained paramedics, EMTs, out in the county on county departments, who are great. But me personally, a lot of times, some trained responders get a little overzealous, and I almost would prefer to just have a good hand.
Okay. I can tell you that from particularly our entity's perspective, the call volume that you have here in town is just way too high for us to be toned out to every single medical. And we have a policy that's pretty much priority one and per the medic's request. Would you like to see any personal tweaking to that, change to that, addition? What if you could write the Golden Woodchuck rule book on that and make that the policy, what would it look like for our response here in town?
So the problem with priority one only response, at least at the local level here, is you have to have consistent and trained dispatchers to actually recognize a true priority one activation. Otherwise, it's useless. So with that being said, and me being a little biased because I'm on the department, I think the system of as requested and traffic accidents, entrapments, structure fires, I'm perfectly okay with that. Until you can get a system of highly trained dispatchers and highly trained EMD, there's really no other way to go about it.
Well, and that's a constant problem everywhere, the dispatcher training, because typically they have such a high turnover rate in those places. By the time they actually get to learning, they're off to greener pastures, and it's bad. I mean, I come from exceedingly rural. I mean, makes this look like a major metropolitan area, and the things you were talking about in the distances and the far. I mean, we would drive 30, 40 minutes to go to a call, and there wouldn't be a department to respond. So you'd literally be the guy there by yourself. So I get all that. I know where you're coming from with that.
Go ahead.
As members of the local fire department, is there anything that you would like to see from the EMS agency change?
Truthfully, at the end of the day, no. What I would truly like to have happen, and I, in my rat brain, I think this would work the best for everyone, is to have the medics read the call notes. And again, I realize you're only going to get the information you get the same from the dispatch, but all calls aren't equal in the way they're toned out, and have it be solely in the hands of the medic, the supervisor, to sit there and say, yeah, go ahead and tone them out. The problem with that is that if you catch one person that feels like being snarky that day and they start toning us out for everything, it undoes it for 5 years, if not longer. Because when our standard daily call volume, I'm going to call it 5 a day. That's a pretty good average. Actually, I think we're closer to 6 now that I think about it. And if you throw, how many medical calls do you have for the entirety of the county every day?
We average anywhere from 30 to 45 a day.
Okay, so we'll even go on the low end. Okay?
30.
Now, we'll say it's 30, and then probably 75% of those are in town. Okay, maybe 70%. So you add another 20 calls to our call volume, and we go from 6 to 26 a day, and you do that for 3 days in a row, you're not going to get a volunteer to respond, particularly for the rest of that week. But it could be literally raining bowling balls outside, and they're not going to respond at that point. because it's just you burned them out too quick. And that's that for us. That's the delicate balance, is trying to truly acknowledge your workload while trying to maintain some sort of reliable response. And to the the tens that are listening, and that's just the callous truth. The fact of the matter is that our department's not big enough to be able to handle that sort of major increase in call volume. And then that's when someone like me will come in and just say, no, look, this is what our contractual obligations are. And I will double down on what our contractual obligations are, and then what are the other contracts that are out there. And it's not necessarily the cleanest answer on the face of the earth, but that's a way to truly be able to maintain some sort of reasonable call volume for our organization.
You know, as a guy that did EMS for years, that 6-8 calls a day is sustainable for a good while. You start breaking over that 10 mark a day, you're just wearing people down to nothing, just instantly. It's insane.
Yeah, well, and you the membership totals that you would need to sustain that, you can do it, but you'd probably, we just take our current membership. We're running 6. Let's just take it to 5. We got 60. So if we need to run 10 a day, you need 120.
Yep.
That's the only way that works, is that you have to bring people in to because you can't reduce call volume, but you can increase the membership numbers so that you don't have to compensate so heavily with total runs called.
Well, yeah, there's definitely a limit of what you ask people to do regardless. I mean, there's just that limit. You know, you're borrowing their time and effort and energy, and that's truly what you're doing. You're borrowing it.
I mean, one advantage for our organization, and when our young guys and gals go off to face other careers, if they spent any amount of time here trying to be remotely active, they had a colossal amount of calls in a really short amount of time. And chances are they had a lot of really good experience calls in that amount of time. And I can make the same argument for your local ambulance agency. It's one thing that your agency is known for, again, is your call volume, but the variety of call volume, and then also just the physical skills that you pick up in that short amount of time. Do you agree?
I definitely agree. I definitely didn't start at this EMS agency for the pay. I can guarantee you that. It was 100% for the experience. And with all that being said, being a member of the fire department and working at said EMS agency, yeah, they'll really take a beating, EMS calls, on your willingness to run anything. I mean, as a young volunteer fireman, you want to catch fires, but if I'm on that first day off, if I'm on that day after my shift, I don't care what the incident is. I'm not responding. The other people can handle it. And that's just like what you guys were saying. It comes from burnout. And if you're asking 100, and I get paid to do it. So when you're asking 100% volunteers to do this day in and day out, it's not sustainable. But like Matt said, you definitely working out here in I'd call it semi-rural area with a decent call volume. You get some wonderful experiences and some not so wonderful experiences.
Let's go down the burnout hole. How do you try and handle not being a burned out, crusty medic? And you are a very young man, but I know your call volume leads to we'll just call it a negative disposition at times. How do you try and tackle that?
So I don't want to go with the because for some reason in EMS, it seems really common to, almost like it's cool to be burned out at a very young age, for whatever reason.
Yeah, that sounds super awesome.
Young guys love being salty for some reason. So I don't like to claim burnout or anything like that. But as cliche as it is, you just have to make time for yourself. And like I said, going back to the responding here, when I get off of a 24-hour shift, I don't necessarily want to go and spend 8 more hours at a volunteer department and hear more tones and deal with more, air quotes, emergencies throughout the day. And not to say that there aren't real emergencies happening on your off days, but I think the number one thing for managing burnout is seriously just making time for yourself. Use your PTO, take days off, and say something. A lot of people, it's getting more acceptable, but a lot of people tend to bottle up their emotions. They go to work and sometimes they even work harder to try and fix it. But as far as me managing burnout, like I said, I just relax at home and
Snort pixie sticks.
something like that.
I think the burnout thing, truthfully, and I do mean this, and I've never been in the medic field and have no intent of ever doing it. I think it's a cheap cop-out for someone that just doesn't like their job. If you don't like your job, quit, dumbass.
Well,
I'm sorry. There's other people that have jobs that are 1,000 times more stressful. Be a kindergarten teacher, okay? And do that for 30 years.
yeah.
And don't pretend that a kindergarten teacher has like a perfect day every single day. And they go to work 5 days a week.
Well, it goes back to what we talked about the other day with Jack and some of the cumulative PTSD and that stress and all that stuff. That stuff builds and that emotional cup fills up. We had that conversation, and that is a taxing job. As somebody that rode a box for 16 years, I can tell you, you get a little jaded and slighted, and I've seen guys just crash and burn and couldn't.
I don't have a problem with someone becoming a realist.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if the optimism cup overfloweth, I think they're in for a hard reality.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. I've never made the connection that I think a lot of other people do make on scenes with calls that would affect people and have affected people that I know of. I've never made that connection myself.
Yeah, in the smaller rural area, it's way easier to make that connection because you literally know everybody.
And that's probably my insulation here.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And even if you're just an EMS provider anyway, you have so many of those frequent flyers that you hate going there, but you do make a connection with those people, whether you want to or not. It happens. I see the burnout guy not knowing that they're burnout. That's the one I see. The guy that knows that he's overstressed and he needs time off, that guy's can figure it out and handle it, and they either move on or not. It's the ones that don't realize that they're crap, that their skills have turned to crap, their attitude's crap, they don't take care of the patients, they don't do what they're supposed to do, they're just going through the motions of showing up to work and poking IVs in people. That's the problem.
So what would be some signs of that?
So I see it. I've seen it. You get a medic that pushes calls that should be ALS off onto their basic driver.
I think that is one of the biggest indicators of burnout, at least from what I've seen in my small anecdotal experience. Whenever a call gets toned out as a chest pain, and it happens everywhere, and, an hour and a half, 2 hours later, you see the EMT locally it's EMT. I don't know about the rest of the United States. I think that's universal. Finishing up the report, you can almost guarantee that paramedic's burnout.
Yeah, that's one of the key deals. I mean, I was an advanced, or still am an advanced, but an AEMT, and I would literally go on a call with the paramedic partner, and they'd be in a chest pain, claiming a 10 of a 10, ringing chest pain, pain in the left arm, all these signs, and they'd turn to you and go, it's yours. No, wait a minute. It's not mine, but I can do that, but let's do the right thing for the patient. I was always sneaky about it because I was conscious of what was going on, and I had more years than most of those people, more experience, more years than most of those people that I was being their partner. And I'd literally just slide in there and stick a monitor on them and have everything where that there was no choice. They had to take that patient.
I think for me, one of the bigger correlations between burnout is pay scale. I do mean that because I universally think that paramedics and EMTs are underpaid. Now, the question is what should they get paid? This could be a whole different podcast where we could have kind of like one of those change my mind scenarios. But an EMT is nothing more than an oxygen jockey, and a paramedic's nothing more than an advanced oxygen jockey. And I don't want to downplay the good work that they do, but they're not doctors. Okay? They're not a nurse. There's a completely different level of training and education there. So you can't tell me that a paramedic needs to be making $80 an hour. I don't know what that number is. To me, it's probably like in our area, I would say 30-ish. And I would say a EMT around, I would say maybe brand new, 15 after their not probation. What the hell do you call that when you hire someone new? Yeah. Jesus, whatever. Once they clear that, 20.
So when you give out the numbers, $20 an hour and $30 an hour respectively, what are you assuming annually? Because we do work the 24-hour shifts, so that bleeds over into overtime. I'm not a mathematician. I'm just a paramedic. So at that point, you'd look at
85,000 and around 65,000. Okay. Where's that number come from? I pretty much believe everyone in the U.S. should make a minimum of $20 an hour, because that's just what it takes right now for a standard living wage. And we're not going to go into the economics of that.
So a few things have happened in the last decade that it truly has affected EMS, kind of good, bad, or indifferent. It's affected it. So the majority of states have gone to a national registry model. National registry has made that where it has to be an accredited degree program for a paramedic. In an effort to drive those. The whole point of that was to bring wages up for the paramedic. So if you go down the hierarchy chart of medicine and emergency medicine side, now this isn't the same for a NICU nurse or something like that, but that paramedic and the crossover from paramedic to RN is a very short process. So they're right there with that RN, but it's different because you have offline direction, where most of those nurses are online direct. They've got a medical director. The doctor's telling them what to do at that point in time. They're not making critical decisions in the field. That's the difference between nursing and emergency medicine, for the most part. Now there are nurses that do that. There definitely are, and that's a different class of nurse. But the paramedic the modern paramedic is closer to a PA or a nurse practitioner than it is an LVN or a MA in skill set knowledge in that part of it. The biggest difference between the paramedic training and the nurse training is the rest of the college that goes with it. It's the math, the English, and all that stuff. That's the difference. The hours of medical training and the clinical training and all that are nearly on par with each other.
And with that being said, and it may not be a popular opinion in EMS, but I think the first step to expecting more as a profession is moving towards requiring a degree, so like the nurses did, however many years ago, whether it be an associate's degree or even offer a bachelor's degree. I mean, right now you can go and be a licensed paramedic with a basket weaving degree for all they care. But I think requiring a degree would be the first step in being able to expect more as far as pay goes.
Yeah, the flip side of that and the problem with that is you get into the rural areas, and Texas is the easy example. If you're in Marfa, Texas, where do you have to go from Marfa to go get your paramedicine degree?
Oh, shit. You'd probably have to go to El Paso or...
Alpine.
God, Alpine's tiny.
Well, that's where West Texas A&M is. So.
Oh, hell, I didn't even know there was a school out there. So, yeah, okay. West Texas A&M.
Yeah. So
by the Crow, that's not that far of a jaunt, but there's no direct road there. That's probably, what, a 4.5, 6 hour drive?
Yeah, it's a piece. So you get into those rural areas, say you're in the Panhandle, and the only place is Lubbock or Amarillo, you don't have the access to train people. Whereas years past when I started in this field, I mean, literally the fire department had the class. The EMS department had the class. Everybody had a class. They were growing their own paramedics. And so there was plenty of people. Granted, that kept wages down. That did all those things that they were trying to circumvent, but there's a price to pay for that. And we're in a state in the world right now where there's a shortage of paramedics. I mean, there's absolutely a shortage of them. How many do you need at your job? Any given day?
3.
Yeah, 3.
At any given day.
Any given day.
24/7.
And would hire 10 if they showed up. Yeah. So it's kind of a double-edged sword with that stuff, and there's never a short, quick answer or fix for it. I agree that the pay scale needs to go up for that stuff, and I agree that the path to get the pay scale up is to bring, I don't know what you say, but bonify their certification into some kind of degree. I agree with all those things.
But also experience equates pay scale too. I mean, you can go in and simply stipulate on the application 10 years of experience required from an agency that responded in a community with more than 10,000 people.
Well, probably 80% of them don't make it 10 years.
Well, that's right. And then the people that you're paying $30, $35 an hour to, you're going to be getting the best. There's plenty of examples where this works. The state of Alaska does this, okay? How do you get people to go and work out in the bush? Teachers, mechanical engineers, water treatment people, power line guys. Well, they don't go there because it's awesome. They go there because they're being paid a colossal amount of money. Now, the people they're bringing out there is not Johnny New School. They're hiring a person with 30-plus years of experience, and they're giving him a colossal paycheck in that process. And beings that in this area, if you did bring your pay scale up to that theoretical $30 an hour, and broadcast it out there, and because you'd get flooded immediately. You'd get 100,000 applicants from the area. And way you weed it down is, like I said, you just tell them minimum 10 years of experience from an agency that responded in a community with more than 50,000 people.
You know, I've got a real good friend that he's 30 plus years in EMS, paramedic. I mean, I don't know how he's had as long a career as he has. He's been the director of a few agencies. He's been a flight medic. He's pretty much done everything in emergency medicine you can do. And he currently still part-times for a couple of different agencies. You know, he may pick up a shift a week or something like that every 2 weeks. He's semi-retired, owns a business, but he still picks up shifts, and he's still probably one of the best paramedics I know. I don't know how he combated that and how he kept from burning out, but he's that guy that did that for 30 years.
Did he always have a side business?
Yes.
That's how. He was never dependent upon the job for the paycheck. He supplemented his paycheck with a side business.
Yeah. Well, that's a big part of it. I know that's a big part of it.
And at the end of the day, when you have a job that you just... So he starts out, obviously likes it, obviously don't know the guy at all, but I can tell you what he is. Likes it, well experienced, encourages his own advancement in the field by taking extra CE stuff, going the extra step to go and learn the extra junior woodchuck stuff to be exceedingly advanced in his field, does care, ultimately comes into a position of being able to make a difference, makes a project of it, makes a difference, project's done, moves on to the next agency. Meanwhile, his income is still entirely supplemented by his other business. And it's not supplemented's the wrong word there, but there's a big difference when you consistently have an extra $500 a week coming in.
Oh, no, his business is bigger than that.
So,
but, yeah.
And that's the difference is that he's able to sit there and remain in the mindset of what's the analogy that I want to use here? The great benefactor. You know, his time, energy, and effort isn't in maintaining his career. His time, energy, and effort is making the career better. That's the universal difference in that guy. Because I've never met him, and I know what his personality and disposition is. Easygoing, smooth talker, really likes training, gets excited about the new technology coming in, really enjoys the conversation on things, how to make the agency better, and things to consider, how can we benefit our people. Guaranteed. Am I even close?
Yeah.
That's the difference. And that's why he was so damn successful in his career. And I will even go as far as to say probably universally loved at every agency he went to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's the difference. That's the difference. He didn't take the stuff he's doing now. He's not doing it because he has to.
No, and he hasn't had to do it for several years, decades. I mean, it's because he wanted to do it.
Now, we're going to segue a little bit because there's something I want to ask our young Diego because I'm curious about this. Are you going to make the medical field your entire career, or are you considering branching out, looking at other stuff, or completely just giving up on it and calling that want to be a truck driver number?
Oh, man. That want to be a truck driver number is always in the back of your mind, or at least my mind. Truck driving sounds awesome. But with that being said, as of right now, I'm doing the typical, EMS to firefighter pipeline. And the thought process behind that is I don't feel like working until I'm 100 years old. If I end up getting into the fire service and not enjoying it as much as I believe I might, then we'll see. I'm young.
Yes, you are.
So, but as of right now, we're going with the fire service, or hoping to go with the fire service within the next year or two.
Okay. Have you given any thought or consideration to what kind of fire department do you want to go to? Because we have a bunch of different types. We have colossal, and we have middle of nowhere, very rural. What do you think?
So definitely not middle of nowhere, very rural department. Like I said, I want to make a little bit more money than I make now, and I want a decent retirement. Not to say that some of those places can't offer that, but it seems to be less common, just looking at the local hiring boards. As far as colossal department goes, I'm not opposed to it, but I don't want to be just another number. You get on a gigantic department in the area, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You're just another guy. And I don't know that I necessarily want to be just another guy. I kind of want to still make a difference. And I don't want to be another guy. So personally, I'm thinking medium-sized department with a little room to grow. It's kind of where I want to end up. I do love being a paramedic, believe it or not. And I want to be somewhere where I can still practice as a paramedic. But definitely, especially when it comes to bettering yourself and progressing in life, I don't want to end up on a department where I have to wait 20 years to promote to driver, just because nobody leaves. It's a great department. It's awesome. Everybody stays forever. But as a young guy looking to succeed, I don't necessarily want to be waiting forever to be able to promote on these smaller to medium departments. I know that goes against a little bit of what I said. I don't want to be just another guy, but I'm not. I personally, and I don't know if it's even obtainable, want to go for a medium to a larger size department with room to grow, where I then have those opportunities to grow with the fire entity.
I've heard that from several of the younger guys, and I think you underestimate the ability to advance in a smaller scenario. Like, you really got to shine. You've got to be the bee's knees at that deal. But there's definitely guys retiring. There's guys getting hurt and leaving. That stuff's happening. It doesn't matter what size that department is. Some of those large departments where they're promoting dozens of drivers and hundreds of lieutenants or whatever every couple of years. Now that's a little bit different deal, but you also got to look at the pool. So the pool's much bigger, and there's not a lot of guys out there that are wanting to ride backwards for an entire career. There's just not. They don't want to do that. There's a handful of them. How they made it through the testing process, I'll never know, but they're looking for somebody that wants to advance when they're hiring you. They're not looking for somebody that wants to stay at the bottom, because they're looking for leaders, right?
Right. I think the one key advice that I would give all of our young guys, the first one is go get hired somewhere. The second one is you are a dang fool if you don't take advantage of the free 4-year degree that they give you. You can even get a free master's. So what if it takes 6 years? And I'm not saying work yourself to death in that. I'm saying chip away, take 2 classes each semester, and get that degree, because, and I have a college education, and I'm going to be the first one to tell you that it's questionable if college education's actually worth it. But
if somebody else is paying for it,
if someone else is paying for it, and it is a universal requirement to get hired at some places, and it is a universal requirement to promote past, we'll say, captain, then what in the hell are you doing that you pick that organization, take advantage of the free education, go get that degree, because there's not going to be that many people in that organization that have a master's. And that someone who's working full-time and does something like that, that tells you a lot about them. Tells you that they have work ethic. It tells you that they have the ability to follow through, that shows you that they have a determination to succeed. I mean, there's a lot of little subconscious things that are really awesome that happen with that. And it's pretty much I'd go as far as to say almost a guaranteed, outside of the truly gigantic departments in the U.S., that's pretty much guaranteed to be bare minimum assistant chief. I mean, that's definitely division and battalion chief.
Yeah, well, it's designed for you to promote.
Right.
It's literally designed for you to ride the ranks, and most of the guys that don't promote, it's their fault. It's not the organization's fault.
The one thing that I think everyone screws up when they get their free 4-year degree. Now, the kicker with firefighting, if you're at a fire department and they're paying for your 4-year degree, they'll pretty much pay for anything on the 4-year degree side. But when you get your master's, I might be wrong, but I think it has to be somewhere.
Emergency management or fire science.
Right. One of those two categories. And the thing I would really, really, really encourage anyone to look into is try and figure out how to get an MBA out of it. Business management. Because at the end of the day, all of your training throughout your career is going to give you the emergency management and fire science stuff. That's day to day throughout your career, building relationships, experience. You're going to build that over time. But someone that has an MBA and actually understands finances, that's a powerful tool in the old toolbox to be able to come in and have that interview for a chief's position and already busted out the budget, and they're coming in with HR questions, and you hijack the interview and tell them, look, I'm not here to actually have HR questions. Let's get through them so I can get through this and explain to you how I'm a benefit to you. But yeah, that's late stage stuff. But that's the one thing I tell all you guys is, for the love of God, at least go get that 4-year degree.
That's definitely the plan for sure. Especially, it's free. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Like you guys said.
I mean, if anything, at the bare minimum, they're going to tack a whole bunch of extra money on each paycheck for the extra certification stuff.
How unfortunate.
Yep.
So any thoughts or cares to fly?
Fly?
Yeah.
Helicopters?
Yeah.
Terrifying. They shouldn't work. I don't want anything to do with them. I don't even like using them around here. I don't want to be within 300 yards of them.
How about airplanes?
Those are a little cooler. Still pretty scared of them. I don't think humans should. We should, go out and explore. But personally, this human.
You want to take your horse and buggy?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Yeah. Back in Civil War.
So I think if we could really expand on how I feel about flying. And I'm a 2-year paramedic. I don't know anything, but from what I understand about flying is, and what I've heard anecdotally, yeah, a lot of people think that you get in there and you get these amazing calls and you get this just awesomeness from flying. You get these traumas, you get these very sick patients, and when you start responding to the rural areas, I'm sure you do. I guarantee you that there are flight services that they get these once in a lifetime calls regularly because they're the only resource for these rural areas. But if you've ever been on one of those calls, phone in for a helicopter, you understand that stuff is getting done, and stuff is getting done right now. Depending on how far out the helicopter is, and if you get into those rural areas, 15, 20, 30 minutes.
Hour and a half.
For a helicopter, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Hour and a half? I mean, if somebody's been with a patient for an hour and a half, that's done. Not to say that the flight crew doesn't have even more work to do, but I think you definitely have to be into the continuation of care rather than being first on scene. Let me see this.
Yeah,
let me
no,
do
it's definitely not. It's not a first contact kind of deal.
Correct me if I'm wrong. They won't fly unless there's some semblance of stabilization, right?
Oh no, they'll fly an unstable patient. Most of them won't fly CPR in progress. Although
Yeah.
I've seen a few do, but most of them won't.
Depending on the situation, I've seen them fly, like you said, unstable as CPR in progress.
I mean, I've not all calls are created equal. One of the probably, I don't want to say visceral calls, but a call where I was thinking like, there was a lot of questionable. The patient's not stable at all. Okay. It was a mom cooking dinner. She was holding her kid in her arm. She had a grease fire. She opened the door, went to throw the grease outside, and hit the door frame, and the grease spilled back on her and the baby. Kid was doused. Mom was doused too, but kid ate it. And to say that the medics, for a lack of better words, literally, I don't even think the helicopter fully settled down when they threw the patients in there and gone. I mean, when I say they weren't on the ground 2 minutes, I literally think that's a stretch. So, I mean, I know there are times when they truly book it.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of difference between 75, 80, 90 miles an hour on the highway and 200 knots in the air.
Right.
A lot of difference.
Also, that story I was referencing, the kid didn't die, so burned catastrophically, but it was no fatality.
And with what I said, that is no discredit to our local flight service. Those guys are extremely educated. They do good work, and
well, but it's just not all calls are created equal.
Right.
There's a big difference between a double compound, double femur fracture and 90% burn baby. There's just those aren't the same calls. So the time that it's going to take to get that patient with the the double compound, double femur break, you're just going to setup's a little different on that.
I had the benefit of working with a lot of on ground services, working with a lot of flight medics, and the general consensus and the way you see that those guys are they're good. They're good at what they do, and they were good at what they did when they became flight medics, and then they improved upon it because they wanted to be the best. They didn't want to be average. And that's probably where that comes from.
You know what? I just realized now, I wasn't on the fire department, had nothing to do with EMS, but when I was flying in Alaska, them western villages in western Alaska, 4.5 hours for that jet to come in.
Yep.
So you would, and the medic on scene was an EMT. And let me tell you, that airplane's not flying for a help I can't poop call. So there was some pretty aggressive protocols in place for those EMTs in that state. It's actually, we won't go down that rabbit hole, but I could talk a little bit about that. And yeah, they have an incredible system built in place for how to do that, including EMTs doing emergency surgeries.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, and any skill set can be expanded upon with medical direction and training. I mean, we could have Diego here doing, full scale appendectomies or whatever in the field.
You can teach a monkey to intubate if you have enough time.
I am a monkey who intubates.
Same. Actually, they are among us everywhere.
I'm just saying we should get thoracotomy kits on all of our boxes.
All you need is a pocket knife and a finger.
Yeah.
And a little bit of, I'm sorry. But he lived. Kinda. No, but just circling back to the original question, would I ever fly? I think if I was going to take the time, energy, and effort to educate myself to that extent, I would probably choose a different avenue.
Yeah.
Not to say that I don't want to be a good paramedic. So, as far as my understanding goes, you've got critical care paramedic and then you've got flight paramedic. So, if I was to choose to try and increase my knowledge, skill set, whatever, I think I would go down the critical care paramedic path line as opposed to the flight paramedic path line, just because personally I don't have any desire to be in the air.
Well, one of them you can stand up and the other one you can't move.
I'm a pretty big guy.
To segue into something else, I've been on plenty of scenes with you with very annoying patients and very high call frequent flyer patients. And I would argue it's one of your strongest suits. And you're a damn good paramedic, but you handle those calls damn near almost on the short level of an act of a miracle every time. How do you manage to maintain such a, for lack of better words, sunny disposition and not want to smother them with a pillow?
So, my partner might actually be able to elaborate on it. It's a lot of verbal venting before and after. But the way that I look at it personally is, and I guess I was going to go kind of make note of it before you said I had a sunny disposition, is I try my absolute hardest to make the best out of whatever situation I'm on. Given the circumstances, there's some situations where you just, there's no making good of it. But whatever the call may be, if I have the time and the energy, that's the biggest one, the energy, to really just maintain the most positive and fun attitude I can about frequent flyers, calls that we don't like.
On your frequent flyers, what's the most you've ever responded in one day to the same frequent flyer?
As a company or personally?
Yes, both.
I think as a company, our record was, and you know who I'm talking about. They were around for a significant amount of time.
Was that a bariatric patient?
It was.
Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say as a company within a 24-hour period, it wasn't uncommon to go out there 4 to 5 times.
I think the highest I ever saw may have been 6. And I know that, well, we were cussing for you.
And when I say it wasn't uncommon, I mean the times where we were out there a lot. That was maybe once every other month or so. But we could almost guarantee on at least one activation every other day. And it would be for stuff as simple as, it would be toned out as a breathing difficulty, and everybody experiences this. Basically, I consider it like a lull. You see the address. Dispatchers, they hear the voice, and they just click through, right? So this patient would say, I can't breathe. So they just enter it into the EMD, breathing difficulty. So every other day, you're headed out there, breathing difficulty, chest pain, unconscious, whatever it may be, and you get out there, and it's like, what's going on? I can't breathe because I can't reach my CPAP. Can you hand it to me? Perfect. Sign here. Press
I went
hard.
out there once because he dropped his TV remote.
Psychiatric, lack of entertainment.
That was the end for me.
So, especially for that patient, like personally, you just have to, and there's a difference. I want to say this because I saw some people treat this person like you shouldn't treat a human being on more than one occasion.
I've seen the same thing.
And I want to make it a point that there's a difference between making light of the situation and making it fun and treating a human poorly.
I'll even add, there's one more criteria in there that needs to be added. Sometimes you need to be stern in explaining to this individual that this isn't appropriate.
Well, I consider that education. You're educating the patient as to what is and what is not an appropriate use of resources, because part of your job is to educate the public. That's just part of your job. And if you get stern or crusty a little bit in that education, I used to have a ER doc that we'd take patients into all the time, and this guy would, it was, you'd hide and watch because he would start the deal. Okay, it's Tuesday at 3 o'clock in the morning. Why is this leg pain an emergency now? And you just watch those people melt. It was amazing. And he wasn't, he was being truthful. He was being honest. He was trying to get them to understand that, it's been hurting you for 2 weeks. And at 3 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, what made it different right now? Why did you call 911 right now? Because you said it's hurt for 2 weeks. Why didn't you just go to the doctor in a normal business hours? That stuff to me, that's just part of the education of the public.
And there's definitely tact that you require over time with how you go about educating the public.
I wasn't a doctor, so I couldn't tell somebody that.
But I like to take the empath route. I understand you. I understand where you're coming from, but I need you to consider what you're doing whenever you activate emergency service in an already taxed system, and just get on a personal level with them. I understand you don't know me, and I don't really know you, but I need you to truly understand the implications of what you cause whenever you continue to abuse the 911 system. And I've had some success with some frequent flyers after my conversation with them, because I've noticed that if you go about it the wrong way, these people they fear calling 911, which is not something that I want from them. Depending on who's I've talked to patients who have been scolded and been talked down upon by other responders to the point where they'll lay in their own feces for days before calling because they're scared. And I think that's there's the super fine line in how you talk to these people.
Well, I don't even think it's a fine line. I think it's a big wide line, and I think it gets crossed a lot too. It's totally unacceptable for what you're just describing. It's no different than the kind of burned out guy or gal that's convincing them that they don't need to go to the hospital, when everybody standing around knows that person needs to go to the hospital, and their only goal is to get them to sign an AMA. And you've seen that.
Oh yeah. That's one thing I don't understand. I hate writing AMAs. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for talking the jammed toe out of taking a ride and using resources. But talking a 10 out of 10 radiating chest pain out of a 12 lead is insane to me.
Yeah, no, it is. You're correct.
Yeah, it's I kind of agree with Jesse. It's not a fine line. And I'm not even going as far as saying that you need to be Mr. Rogers with the patients, but for me, a lot of it equates to you need to treat the patients and talk to the patients exactly how you would prefer to be talked to and treated. And them being concerned, worked up, judging their pain on, and treating it as if they're the most insignificant thing in the world for interrupting your microwave burrito, just isn't going to work. Frankly, I think just being blunt and flat, if you had to pick one, that's the one to be. If you're not the Mr. Rogers personality, happy-go-lucky, then just be cut to the chase and honest with them. And probably one of the bigger things I see lacking is just explaining stuff while you're doing it on scene. The last thing that I would encourage, like particularly the young medics, is you're explaining something to someone. Don't use common references to a 20-year-old to a 90-year-old woman. That's not going to work. I don't care how you dumb it down, but that's not where it's at. And I see that a lot, and it's not intentional. It's the way they speak.
Yeah, let me hook this up and snap a picture of your heart.
Yeah. So that's probably one of the bigger ones. Last thing I'm just going to ask you is, I'm going to give you a scenario, and I'm going to see at how you respond to this scenario.
BSI scene safe.
It's Wednesday afternoon at 3:00. You show up to a nursing home, and all the staff either just got hired or they've been on shift for 3 minutes.
Oh, they always. That's
So,
fact.
unfortunately, the scenario is a little bit too unrealistic. It's actually 3:27, and little did you know, shift change at nursing homes is every minute. They change shifts every minute of the day. I don't know how they have that much staff, but almost every time that you go in a nursing home, it's going to be shift change. But go ahead.
No, yeah, it's just, and you're trying to find the DNR. How do you go about finding it?
We're gonna Inspector Gadget some files. I don't know the answer you're looking for.
Oh, I'm just curious how you get the DNR. Do they have one?
I will say, as terrible as nursing homes are, the local nursing homes usually have been pretty good about providing us with DNRs. Usually within the first minute or two. That's just personally, in my experience.
Oh, so you haven't had the glorious event of bringing the guy back to life that had the DNR, and
No.
he just points at you like the evil monkey from Family Guy.
That is my biggest fear.
And it's pretty horrible, actually. He was
And-
mad.
That's what a save. Was he even in cardiac arrest in the first place?
Well, there was CPR was started. It was happening when I got there, even though I broke the sternum.
Yeah. Man, I'm a big proponent of DNRs. I think. You might cut this out. But after 60, you should be thrown in a wheelchair and seatbelted.
And that closes our podcast with Dr. Kamborkian.
And after 70, DNRs for everybody. I mean, no, but in all reality.
In all reality, you're not far off. I mean, at some point...
Yeah, if we live in Cuba.
Well, no. I mean, I'm not saying you impose it on everybody. I'm saying everybody should consider that, because what is the state of being going to be after a major incident? What are you going to be when you come back out of the other side of that?
I think...
Are you going to be a vegetable? Because at 75 and you have a major cardiac event and you get brought back to life, chances are your quality of life is not what it was prior to that event, no matter what happens. Like, it's going to be dramatically reduced. Is that where you want to be? I think everybody should, as they get older, consider that.
I think it should be presented to more people than it is by primary care physicians or otherwise. Just personally, I have a grandpa who is he's not healthy, but he's definitely not as sick as our everyday patients. But he could use the consideration of a DNR, because if he was to have a major event, his quality of life is...
And I think people misunderstand what a DNR really truly
Right.
means. And I see it in paramedicine all the time. It doesn't mean do not treat. It means do not resuscitate. That means you're already dead. That means I'm dead, don't bring me back to life. That doesn't mean don't provide medical care to me. And I think that's a pretty important distinction.
Right. And some people do think it means the second you step on that banana peel, that all treatments stop, and that's just not the case.
Putin made me fall off my bicycle.
Oh, politics.
Yeah, it's just a pet peeve of mine. I've seen some pretty bad this is not like ambulance agency stuff. I've showed up to some pretty questionable calls where the patient had passed. They had passed, probably around breakfast.
And it's now 2:00 in the morning. The next day.
At least 2:00 in the afternoon. And, we'll go one step further. And so we show up, kick open the door, the nursing home. This old lady sitting in a chair, and she's like, "Duh, what are you doing here?" Well, that lady's not on CPR in progress. Where's it at? Turns out it was her neighbor. Well, go in the room, and this individual was laying in bed, and imagine the seated position, and someone had passed away. So they kind of slumped down, but they stayed in their chair. And then imagine that person being there for a few hours. And sounds like they got a medical coming in, so we're going to go ahead and turn Diego loose. We appreciate your time, energy, and effort. Thank you, sir.
See ya.
Go save lives. We'll finish your story.
I'll let them get out the door and
Yeah.
finish up. So imagine someone that had passed away in a chair, and, they'd kind of slumped down. And then we show up on scene and imagine a body perfectly frozen in that position as someone that had passed away in a chair, and they're laying in bed on their back in that position.
Yeah. Full rigor mortis.
Al
Yeah. I've
showed up to that before.
seen that. That's unfortunately more common than you think. And I don't want to rag on nursing homes too much because we could go way deep down that rabbit hole. But
No, I mean, and we were talking about earlier about, pay scales and on. And, that's another classic example of really scraping the bottom for lowest pay scales possible while maximizing profits.
Well, and they turned to more MAs, medical assistants versus LVNs or LPNs. And
Right.
it's just, they minimal staffing levels and all that, it all plays into it. So,
Well, I think we've been a touch long on the day. Do you have anything you want to add?
no, I think we had a good discussion.
I think we will call it a day with that. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. If you have anything that you'd ever like to add to us, particularly that one person in Australia, you'd like to see a particular episode on something, you can always send us an email at ittastelikeBurningcast@gmail.com. And past that, have a good evening.
See you next time.